Hi, and welcome to the audio commentary for the Polcheck Chronicles, Episode 1, The Case of the Missing Case. My name is Craig Moore. I'm the director and, I guess, co-creator of the Polcheck Chronicles. And, yeah, we're starting off here with a lot of little tricks, shots of the city of Sydney, which I filmed for another thing I was working on, which will come up probably a bit later in Polcheck's continuity. We've kind of worked them in together. And the office here, where Polcheck is sitting, is actually Pat's living room. So that's why you only ever see it from one corner, so you don't get a full sense of the entire living room. The music you get here was written by Darryl Watkins, who wrote it the first time we attempted to do Polcheck. Polcheck was a web series that we started 7 years ago. And it featured Pat as Polcheck, as before, but he was much younger then, and the episode, the series actually, I should say, had a very different feel to it. And when we decided to rejuvenate it, we decided to start from scratch and really give it much more of a noir feel. It was always supposed to be a noir comedy, but I don't think any of us as filmmakers understood exactly what that meant. But this time around, it's much more noirish, has a much more, classic sort of feel to it, even though it is technically set in the current day. One of the things that you notice in the opening is that it says it's an entirely improvised series, and for those of you wondering what that means, it's a series where we have a plot worked out in advance, and we get on there on the day, and all of the jokes and all of that is worked out at the time. The voiceover from Pat, he basically comes in 2 or 3 days after we film, when I've edited it together, and he just sits and records the lines. Again, very basic, very improv, very quick. The song that you're hearing here from Emily is one she wrote herself and recorded herself with another guy whose name eludes me just now. I'm really hoping actually that he can do more for me, because I loved his little jazz piano that he used for this song. It's just perfect. So I'm hoping I can get him to do some more for me. But yeah, so M came in, and as was the original Case of the Missing Case, this is actually a remake of the previous Polcheck's first episode, and Emily was the villain slash femme fatale, I guess you could say, in that one. This scene was always one of our earliest jokes that we had set up. It was doing the big kiss and the slap, with the overview being that the romance was brief and fiery. I don't know why, I just thought that was a hysterical joke. This one, this little joke was something that Pat worked out at the time. I decided that I really needed the light. We'd already started filming, and we had the light coming in from outside, and I was like, we really need to change that so it's inside so I can get better light on M. And Pat came up with that joke of the car being towed away, and he'd left the lights on. And then the rest of it is all lit from the one desk lamp on his desk. That's all the light for this scene. One great thing about doing film noir and doing things in black and white is that you don't really have to. Lighting in some ways becomes much easier. Film noir is all about deep shadows and very high contrast blacks and whites, and using one really high light source in your shot really sells that. So in some ways it makes it easier, because I'm not a very good filmmaker. I'm not a very good lighting guy. So this is where M still had for some reason she has a vaguely British accent. Yeah, that was a fun joke too. Yeah, it's a joke that I don't think anyone really gets, but we laughed, which was, yeah, earlier on she says, sister-in-law, in-law, like she made it up really quickly. And then when Pat sees a bum, he's like, it's a very nice bum, in-law. And we thought that was hysterical, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone laugh at it other than me and Pat. So, but this scene was one of the few that we did quite a few times. Mostly with these, we usually do it in about, I don't know, 5 takes maybe. Pretty quick. But this one was one where it took us quite a while. I mean, we did it from several angles, and we did turnarounds on Em and Pat and the long distance and whatnot. But it just took a while to really come together. Both the first half of the scene where they're sitting down, that wasn't too bad, but once they're standing together behind the desk, yeah, it took, I don't know how many anymore, about 15 or 20 of them. And yeah, so unfortunately, that's that. I don't know. It just didn't gel, and I'm still not as happy with this scene as I am with some of the other ones. But it came out alright in the end. But yeah, like little scenes like that. I was glad that the lipstick still showed up in black and white. I wasn't sure it would. So when we go to our first location, this is actually around the corner from Pat's house, where we were filming everything on the first night. Pat and Emily and Daryl, who wrote the music, is also the guy who snatches the bag here, the case. We were there earlier, and then Emily and Daryl kind of had to go, and Steph, who was playing the homeless guy, was late. So so we filmed all of these scenes without Steph being there, and then in the seconds where you see the turnarounds of Steph, that was shot, an hour and a half later, when he finally was able to arrive. Also in that pushdown scene, which you get to see again from this angle in a minute, the first time they did that, I was really convinced that Daryl had knocked her down, because I thought she sold that really, really well. And we shot that between the different angles probably about 8, maybe 10 times. It came together pretty well. I think the shot's pretty effective. So yeah, all of this was about an hour and a half later. All of this stuff with Pat and Steph. Steph Tyrek, who is a Australian comedian, I know because he does comedy trivia. He runs it at the pub that we go to. And yeah, I was just like, I need this sort of homeless guy. There's a lot of exposition, and he agreed to come in and help me out. So again, this is still an hour and a half later, and then in a second, we're about to flip back to before Steph arrived that night. So right there, so that's Pat talking to no one. And then Pat talking to no one to Emily and Daryl, who were there earlier on as well. So all of this was done without Steph. Interestingly, the stuff with Steph actually went on a lot longer, but because of timing, I had to cut it all down a bit. But it's just a shame. There were some very funny jokes that Steph made. Steph and Pat worked really well together, much the way that Pat and Nikki, who appears only briefly in this episode, do as well. They've got just a chemistry. Pat is very quick. He's very fast on his feet, so a lot of these jokes and the spontaneity of Polcheck comes from Pat. And it's very rare to find actors who can completely keep up with him. Some can do fine. Like Emily can't sort of react as quickly as he can to a joke, but she's great in that she's A, willing to do anything, and B, doesn't flinch. A lot of people laugh or flinch or kind of lose their train of thought, and Emily is great at keeping that straight. That shot of the moon and that shot is just off my balcony, which I got as establishing shots. They're actually completely different this night as well. I filmed them just randomly one night when I saw the moon was full, and I needed some transitions for different films, so I thought I'll grab them. So this scene of the two of them in the car, this is a tricky one actually. It's interesting. We filmed a scene of the two of them together in the hallway of my building, and it was originally supposed to be Polcheck on his way into the building where Daryl is, and on the way out he runs into Gurns, and then that's why Gurns comes along later on. But what happened? We filmed it in the sort of basement corridor of my building. And it was really echoey. You couldn't hear a word that they were saying to each other. So when we got together to do the recording for the voiceovers with Pat, we sat down, we went down to Pat's car, and we're sitting in Pat's car, so I'm filming his half. And we called Nicky on the phone, and his sister Elise filmed him sitting in a car on his end, and that's actually them talking and doing the joke back, straight normally to each other. So we're actually both recording at the same time. So that is a real conversation happening. Which is, it's not a great scene, although someone told me it was their favorite scene, which I thought was odd. But yeah, it's not great, but it fits the sort of the vibe that we were going for. This apartment is my next door neighbours. They live a couple of buildings over, but they've been friends of mine for many years. You're bound to see at least Bob, one of the people who lives here. he's bound to show up. He's a cool actor, and he's usually willing to help us out on these. He was I don't think he was here actually when we filmed this. I can't remember, but he's helped a lot on my films over the years. So all of this fight was again very spontaneous. We didn't work it out in advance. We just made it up. This 20-minute later joke was because we weren't quite sure how to get out of. Polcheck is rather brutally smacking the guy around, and so our way of making it funny was to cut to that 20 minutes later, and then have Polcheck deal down, and then he just punches like nothing is wrong. Yeah, it was a good joke, and the way the cigarette goes flying there is pretty funny. Mind you, that incredibly fake-looking headbutt is what does him in after being pummeled repeatedly for 20 minutes. Oh, poor Daryl. This shot where we had him just like head first into the couch with his bum in the air. It was a bit like, well, we thought it was very funny at the time, but Daryl had to maintain that position for a while in case he was going to be on camera. So there's quite a lot of the time, even when you can't see him, he's actually still there in case I needed to pan down or around. I've had some people be a bit confused about how Emily's character manages to get to the apartment, and my idea was that she was following Polcheck. I guess that doesn't come across very well. Now, speaking of scenes that took a while to do, this one was huge. This was easily the most takes we did of any scene between the different angles, and you can certainly see it. There's things in it that I didn't notice. Emily's hair, you'll notice, slowly becomes further and further undone from its ponytail. There's definitely some jump cutting in the way that Emily's positioned and Polcheck is positioned. And I'm sad to say that's my fault. We easily did this more than 20 times. It's a long scene. It didn't quite come together. Daryl, you can't see him, but Daryl is actually kneeling against the couch down below there, and in that shot too, I think. But yeah, it just wasn't gelling. Like, and it was me. I kept telling them to do different things and try different things and leave pauses for Polcheck's voiceover and whatnot. And over time, I think we got it in the end, and I'm really happy with how it came out. It's just the continuity of the scene isn't great. One thing that's interesting is we talk a lot here, there's a few mentions in this episode to Polcheck's past, and how Polcheck used to be some sort of criminal, or that he's somehow used to be a part of something bad, that he's trying to escape his past. That was all made up by Pat at the time. We actually had no intention of it, so when we went to the voiceover we added a few more references. And now we've actually shaped quite a few of the characters around that, and we've got the relationships between the characters is now a bit different because of Pat coming up with that improv. So that's it's interesting the way that we work sort of sideways that way. Daryl is still, even though he's not on show, Daryl is definitely still down there. Nikki's arrival. See, again, we filmed this before we filmed the corridor scene. So the idea was that Nikki was actually had been in the same building, Detective Gerns, I should say, had been in the building only recently, which is how he was so close by. But for the sake of the joke, I think it still kind of works, wrapping up the episode. And this is actually echoing the original case of the missing case, where we leave with Polcheck standing alone in the room by himself, kind of as he always will be, standing alone, even when his friends sort of help him a little bit. And then we had this follow-on gag where Daryl gets up and gets ready to leave. And I like that he gives no resistance here. Polcheck comes in and is like, oh, well, that's embarrassing. But he doesn't, handcuff him. He doesn't have to do anything. Daryl's just like, yeah, fine, I'm leaving. So, and then I needed an end cap, so I basically reused the exact same footage because I didn't actually think this through carefully enough to have a proper end cap. And, yeah, but it kind of worked out pretty well. And we move into the closing credits. So, yeah, I'm hoping to do commentaries for all of these. Oh, at the end of these credits, it says we're going to film in, you'd see the next one in June. We had a slight real-life hitch, so the next one we'll be filming in the middle of July. But we do have it planned. There is going to be more, so for both of you who... Oh, it just says we'll return. I changed it. Alright, good. That means that I don't have to justify why you haven't seen one yet. But yes, next episode should be up by the end of July. Thanks everyone for listening.